Hi, my name is Daniel, and today I'm going to ask you some questions about my career research. But first of all, let me introduce to Mr. Gian, which I appreciate him for taking his time to tell us about his experiences with this career.
Yeah. My name is Jan. I've been a software engineer for about 2 or 3 years. I studied computer science at Queens College. I went to coding boot camp, joined an ad tech startup called Ad Tech, got laid off during the tech recession, and then I interviewed during the down market, and I've been working at State Farm for about a year or so now. So currently, I'm working on cloud solutions, and we're migrating old legacy code over to AWS.
That's really great. So first of all, let me ask the question: how long did you have to study?
Yeah, I mean, like outside of getting like my bachelor's in computer science, um, you know, from a studying standpoint, I would say like you kind of want to reverse engineer like what employers are looking for, especially if you're trying to get into the market. It took me about like 6 months or so going through coding boot camp and probably around like an additional 1 month or so of preparation, like right after. So I would say around like 6, 7 months.
Oh. Who influenced you to get into this field?
Who influenced me to get in this field? So I was really young. I was involved in a local food pantry that served my community in Elmhurst, and we pretty much gave like food um, to families or people in need. And back in the days, we had to process like entries for guests that would come to grab food, and we had a bunch of like paper entries. So I had suggested to my supervisor and told him that I think we should use like a computer like system to kind of facilitate the current process because it's taking a very long time. Yeah, I mean
Oh, yeah,
that's how I
really,
got into software.
really interesting. And this connect with the question that when did you start to get interested in this job?
When did I get? I mean, I always had like a love for software, just in terms of like impact and also from like a scaling standpoint, in terms of like how it can impact people's lives. When I was first working at like Attentive, it was definitely like a lot of things I needed to learn. So it was kind of like drinking water from a fire hose, but you kind of learn the entire software development life cycle from like start to finish, and it gets really fun because you get to like work with a lot of different problems. You start understanding things from a higher level. You understand like how architecture gets involved in terms of the entire like uh, process, and then from a decision making standpoint, like how those like decisions kind of impact the sort of like work that you do that's kind of tied in. So I don't know. I've always loved software. I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah, I understand you. The way that you see the information, see the what passionates you. I get it. And why is this job important to you?
I think technology has shifted the landscape um, considerably. So it it's kind of like a multiplier on productivity in some way, shape, or form. So if you imagine like a time where or when like we didn't have technology, things were kind of done like differently back then. But now we
Mm-hmm.
have like a bunch of productive systems in place that kind of like speed kind of the things that you would normally do on a day-to-day basis. And like the whole purpose of software is really to improve like quality of life no matter like what domain or what problem you're trying to solve. um, so I don't know, I've always viewed software as kind of like a multiplier on productivity, and it's just a means and like a medium to kind of like improve people people's lives. So for me, like learning like software from like a skill set standpoint is like, wow, now you have like the superpower where you can kind of impact people's lives, through technology. So I don't know. That's why I love software so much.
Wow, it's a really good, a really really good. Okay, so you tell me that you study in the Queen's College, and I don't know if
Hmm.
you have more like where did you study in order to get prepared for your job?
Yeah, I would say like in college, a lot of the things you learn don't necessarily. I would say it supplements a lot of like what you'll use in your day to day, but college is definitely more on theory. Um,
Mm.
but a lot of the things that I learned, um, like on the job and whatnot, very, very different just because the industry can move like very quickly. But there's still merit in terms of the things you learn in school because you kind of still need that theoretical foundation and it kind of goes hand in hand with practice. Um,
And for the last question, what influence did do you have or in your life to get into this field?
yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually a first generation immigrant. My parents came to the States when I was like 3 years old. Um, they came from like a small village in like China called Taishan, and they didn't really have much money back then. So they had a very strong emphasis early on during my childhood of focusing on like education. Um, they didn't really know how to navigate the American landscape, unfortunately, so I had to kind of like figure everything out on my own. Um, and my brother actually, he did not finish like high school. He didn't really see a point. His English wasn't very good either. Um, and he was also kind of working during that time, and so my parents kind of pushed me to continue with my education. Unfortunately, I didn't really know too much about like internships. So um, during my senior year of college, I attended like a seminar hosted by Google, and the host there um, just told the entire like auditorium, like, "Hey, you guys can start like applying for internships." And this was like geared towards like freshmen and sophomores, and like I was a senior, so I kind of panicked, and I was like, "Oh, crap! Like I have no idea like what I'm doing." Um, and so yeah, like my advice would definitely be like if you can get some real world experience, definitely try to get some internship like experience under your belt. Um, in my case, I ended up graduating college and I decided to kind of like min max like from a time standpoint because I wanted to enter the market as quickly as possible. So I decided to join a coding boot camp, and I had to pay like a lot of money to kind of go through that experience of like essentially building out projects just so I could add something to my resume. So if you haven't done that yet, my recommendation is like, bolster out your resume, definitely build out some like um, projects and definitely add that to your resume and apply for internships while you still can. So, um,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate and thank you so much because I identify as you because I'm migrant for first generation too, and it's difficult for me adapt to the new life, to the new language, but uh, I appreciate the advice that you give me from a high school who is near to graduate next year to senior, and thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I think it's that for today. I really appreciate your time uh, to be here to answer my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.